because I have to say I watched. So I've watched this back after I'd read a lot of these comments about if you can't score against 11 men, all this kind of stuff. The first thing that I'd say is that actually during that period where once kind of Wire pulled the head out of their arse and decided that they weren't just going to keep giving penalties away, Austin did actually control the game pretty well in terms of tactical kicking, and he didn't actually they didn't actually have that many opportunities during that period, in my opinion. If I think about the specific things that they did particularly poorly during that time, Maguire's kick out wide early on was a poor option. When moving it through the hands would have been better. And I think they were slightly unlucky in terms of Addy's no try, in terms of the bounce of the ball. It kind of came out. It was Crooks, wasn't it? I think who it kind of knocked it into the wide player. But yeah, I mean they, in the first half they didn't have a cutting edge KR. I don't think that's not a surprise to anybody. But yeah, I have to say I thought Wire actually controlled the time when they were reduced in terms of their players pretty well. It's just a shame that they ended up like that.
There was that, I would say, there was some nice tries scored later on in the game, but the most inspirational moment of the game was Ben Curry's held up tackle on
Lawler, wasn't it?
Was it George Lawler? Yeah. So not a renowned finisher, even though he's playing well this year. Not a renowned finisher, but there was so much space. You thought there's no way he's not going to score here, and I don't think it was on him that he didn't score. It's all on Curry for what an amazing try-saving tackle that was.
Yeah,
and that was during the 11-man period.
Yes. No. I want to give. Yeah. I mean, I've noted that as a classic example of how to wrap the ball, even though the line breaker's been made, and he's kind of. It looked like he was wheeling round to pop it down, and then Curry comes in to stop it. Can we talk about the Lynham hit? Can we talk about that briefly?
Yeah. Sure. Totally.
What was your what's your instinct? Forget the disciplinary kind of decision afterwards. What about the live decision of a yellow card?
Well, I suppose it had the hallmarks, didn't it, of a red card, given that it was late and high.
Yes, spoiler alert. I think it should have been red, but go on.
The one thing I would say is I'm not sure that the match officials at the time were certain that it was direct high contact, which is why they would go with the caution of a yellow card if they weren't certain that it was direct head contact. I think that's the only thing I can suggest that is why it was a yellow card.
Yeah.
It looked nasty though, didn't it? It looked nasty.
Well, this is the thing, and I seem to remember when we recorded the game, the Saints game earlier on, he did another, pretty shitty move on Grace after the try had been scored. Yeah. And it's a grubber move. It's a grubber move, isn't it? It's pretty shocking, really. And for me, that kind of stuff is, my notes about it is it was completely unnecessary because the ball was in another postcode by the time he made the hit. It wasn't even similar to like the Sam Moe one or something like that. He went looking for him, and I think you're right in terms of, because I've tried to look at it a couple of times. Even from the replays that you've got, I'm not certain that it was first contact with the head. But the reason I'd make it red is because it was unnecessary, and I'd probably throw the word reckless in there. I think it was reckless.
Well, the grade C charge would go along with that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. To me, I think 3 games is probably about right, actually. But in the game itself, to me that would have been a red card because it was a grub act, and we don't need to be doing that. I've said this before. We don't need to be doing that kind of shit to fellow professionals. At the end of the day, you've got a duty of care, and maybe he was just trying to live up to his freshly shaved head. I don't know, because he certainly looked like a meathead.
Yeah, and then Warrington just couldn't stop themselves, could they? They just gave penalty away after penalty away after penalty away, and Patton then went in the sin bin as well. But in a way, that sort of spell that you just talked about, how well Warrington controlled it, and the inspirational moment of the Curry tackle, the bounce of the ball going against Hull KR as much as themselves not really doing anything with the ball at the same time, that kind of gave me the feeling that, far be it from all the Warrington fans and the doom mongers on there sort of about this isn't how we're going to win finals, kind of this game made me think, when Warrington want to win a game, they can just turn into an absolutely top class team. So they're doing it slightly differently to how St Helens are doing it this year, and St Helens are doing everything better than everyone else. But what St Helens are doing this year is getting into a winning position and then taking the foot off the gas. What Warrington are kind of doing is getting into a winning position, getting close to a winning position. They're not quite winning it, but letting the other team in it. But then they just have those moments of absolute quality that say, well, we're better than you, though. Like, they're not putting in full effort, full time, it feels like, because they know that they don't need to beat these opposition. And I just think some of the tries that they scored, really drew a line around that. Blake Austin's try just before half time, I thought that was absolutely wonderful play.
Yeah, but yes, it was wonderful play, but what a killer in terms of KR's kind of resistance, battering on the door kind of consistently pretty much for most of the half, and then getting your pants pulled down by that kind of great play, as it was great play. Deserves, it was great, but yeah, absolute killer for KR.
Yeah, KR did flash in the second half. They scored some good tries. Josh Drinkwater's, I think it was his first try, was quite similar to the Blake Austin try. So you got to mention that in the same sort of conversation. And that
it was a nice inside pass, wasn't it, from Maguire?
Yeah, that came after Ben Crooks had the breakaway try. That was just sort of for nice for KR to get to 0. They finally found a way to score, and we kind of thought normal service would be resumed, but it didn't. It got close, didn't it? It got to within one score twice. Close.
Yeah, it did. It did, and I think I'd like to just talk a little bit about something that wasn't referred upstairs, the Lynham try. Now, I think, for me, if this had been referred upstairs, I think this should have been ruled out for obstruction. And I think, to be honest, it's Maguire's mouth and his history with his mouth that meant that Hicks didn't actually look at this one, because he just thought Maguire was moaning as usual. But I think Maguire was actually impeded, and based on some previous decisions, the fact that the player was making the dummy run did make contact with Maguire, I think this would have been ruled out for an obstruction.
To be honest with you, I can't remember the move well enough to comment.
No, that's fair enough. It was the first try in the second half, and for me, if Maguire, instead of getting up and trying to come back and affect the tackle, which was a poor effort because he got it down with 3 players on his back, if he'd actually just fallen on the floor and put his arms out, as some other players have done this year, I think it'd have probably been looked at by the video referee. But the fact he got up and actually went back.
Had the play kind of not cleared that space at that point, though? I'm trying to think.
Not for me.
Like, they were all trailing the play, and had the ball not gone ahead of where I'm trying to think, but had the ball not gone kind of ahead of where the potential obstruction would have happened by the time that was a factor?
Let me put it this way. So the dummy runner makes contact with Maguire. Maguire stumbles backwards. He manages to get back and to Lynham, and he's part of the tackle on Lynham. So the ball hadn't gone past, because it was so close that Maguire was able to get out of the contact and get to the contact with Lynham. So to me, that's part of the contest, and to me, it impacted it. So I think that
you obviously
not that I would necessarily
much better than I do, to be honest. Yeah.
It's because it's the last game I've rewatched. But the point is that we've had this season, we talk about consistency, we've had tries ruled out this year for brushes with the obstruction. This was a very clear contact with Maguire, and for me, if it had gone upstairs, it would have probably been ruled out. But yeah, if you can't remember it, I'm being a little bit unfair on you.
Pitch, so question marks are plenty
exactly.
about that try. But even like when it got close, when Ben Curry's try, that was a really good piece of play. Like Austin, very quick to change the point of attack, and he was making the right decisions all the time in this game.
It was one of his good games. One of his good weeks, wasn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, and I think Clark was very good. Both Clarks, but particularly Darryl Clark was very good again. They'd be my sort of stop. But the highlight moment for me in this one would be that tackle during the 13-on-11 period. That just it was just brilliant. It was one of the best cover defending tackles you'll see.
Yeah, well, this was the thing, because obviously I'm watching it on replay, so I knew that KR didn't score in the first half, but I'm like, oh God, Lawler's going to score. It must be ruled out for some other reason, and then actually he didn't even get it down. So yeah, it had me fooled, and I knew the score. So yeah, great effort from Curry without a question.
So what do you think then, Warrington, in terms of
what do I think of them?
Yeah, like are they stumbling their way to wins? Are they switching off too much? And do they have an attitude problem? Or are they just doing enough and playing within themselves at times? I can't work it out.
No, I think it sounds obvious, an obvious thing to say, but they are clearly the second best team in the league, and they're clearly the second best at doing lots of things. So they're probably the second best team at scoring. They're probably the second best team in terms of their organisation. They're probably second best in terms of their ability to close a game out. And they do sometimes have mental errors in terms of their ability to let teams back into games that they shouldn't do. You know, you just have to look at the FC game, don't you? Before Magic, they're losing games stupidly in some ways, but when actually their base level is clearly better than 10 of the other 11 teams, I would say. So I think they're humming along nicely, and there'll be a danger obviously when it comes to the semis, but yeah, they're not. It wouldn't surprise me if they got turned over at the semi either, to be honest.
I just think they've got so much class that they just turn it on at the times where they need to. Is the way I see it. But let's move on to a team that have got way too much class for everyone else right now, as much as it pains me to say. Saturday afternoon's game on BBC One was St Helens versus Wakefield. It was 26-6 at half-time. It ran out to 48-10 at full-time in favour of the home side, St Helens. 6,453 saw Chris Kendall referee this one. Now, that is a crowd that's not quite as bad as the two previous ones, but we're talking about a team that are playing some fantastic rugby.
Yeah.
Do you think this one might have been impacted by another local team having a big game later on that day that people would have been planning to watch more so than getting down to this game? I don't know. Maybe,
but there can't be that much of an overlap. I mean, I know obviously we know there is an overlap, certainly even in our listenership, but but it's not, that it's not explaining the missing 3,000 people on this crowd for me.
Well, it didn't. It certainly didn't, and it didn't inspire the listeners either, because we only have one fan review in on this game. It was from Josh as well, so not a fan of either of the two sides. But he said, "Well, who could predict that? Everyone." But there were slight periods in the game where it seemed like it was going to be a close contest. But the inevitable happened. You have to say, Wakey have done it again with Croft and Kershaw, who I'm sure will be getting paid with biscuits, will in a few years be sold to another club for more monies. Yeah, young Jack Croft. I think maybe it's worth starting there on his debut with what I think was maybe his first in